distinguished Toastmaster, Pat Croal. Pat, you're on mute.
Myself. Great. Thank you so much, Jackie. Fellow Toastmasters, and especially welcome to our guest, Dave, today. One of my favorite quotes, and I don't know who to quote this to, but is when presented with an opportunity to lead. And that is really the premise of my presentation today on situational leadership. It's like Jackie said, it's a level 5 project in the dynamic leadership pathway. And I've really had a lot of fun and interesting speeches and projects along the way in this path. So situational leadership, today this is really about didactics and how to do all this. It's really about some of the experiences I've had in applying situational leadership. And I'd like to hear through our evaluation team at the end how this came across. You know, how did you get some information that you might not have heard before? Did you get a few doors opened in ways you might apply situational leadership any differently than you already do? So let me start at the beginning of the story, at least the beginning of the story for me as a leader at Park Nicollet. Now, back in January, many of us were probably serving in the after effects of having nice holidays. Some of us might have been sick in January. I was sick in January, early January. Maybe some of you were too. Before we even heard about the word COVID-19 or coronavirus or novel coronavirus, as it's known. And perhaps some of us were sick with the virus, and others might have been the flu. Back in January, it was almost business as usual for me as a leader, going into the lab every day with a small little change that happens often in leadership about putting together a plan if this virus that we're hearing about expands and envelopes our community. So as a leader, one of the most important roles that I had and still have is that planning for what if, planning for disaster planning, business continuity planning, any of the types of planning that we might do in advance, that oftentimes the plans aren't always used, but they're in place so that we put ourselves there in case it's ever needed. So that was happening in January for me. As a leader, we had team members coming to work every day, taking care of our patients. Pathology, my area where we do pathology, is around tissues and biopsies when people come in through surgeries for either diagnosis or treatment. So we were working that. We were hiring team members, training team members, had leaders that were working on big goals for the year, especially around process improvement, improving their work areas, bringing in new instrumentation, really all of that. So as a leader, my situational leadership role was to support my team, remove roadblocks, and help everybody be successful in the roles that they play in the laboratory. And then I also had that little voice in the background that every day, almost every day, we had a command center briefing on coronavirus. And really that was in the early days of January and even early February. It seemed like something that might not ever happen, but we took it seriously. We understood that this is a plan that we needed to put in place, and not unlike other years when we've had other situations that we needed to plan in advance for. So I remember one of the first things that we did as a leadership group, and we all agreed on, is that we needed to make sure that we had a plan for our team members. We had a plan for ourselves in case something happened to us as a leader and who would step in, and what would happen in the bigger picture across our organization when and if something happened that people weren't able to work, or we had so many patients that needed our care, and how would we care for them. So one of the most important things we also did was talk to each other and communicate with each other. And probably even more so than normal, we might have a regular weekly meeting or a monthly meeting on a certain topic where we gather in a conference room, and very rarely ever use the word Zoom or Microsoft Teams or Microsoft Excel, so that we talk to each other. So we were meeting in person back then. But quickly, when we heard about the first patient that was diagnosed with coronavirus, a novel coronavirus in January in Washington State, we sprung into action. And we sprung into action so much so that almost entirely started meeting online, like many of you in your workplaces, meeting online, started creating plans and situations to help support our teams if and when they either got sick or the jobs changed. One of the toughest things that we saw with our organization, and probably many healthcare organizations, is try to have some foresight. And so not only are you a planner, but foresight in supporting our teams in the case that we had to downsize or furlough or lay off employees because jobs changed, so that we wanted to make sure we had the ability to take care of our patients. So early in February and March, we were taking care of putting those plans together, ways we would support our team, connecting with our team on a regular basis. Even though what we had right now are mostly virtual meetings, it did require us as leaders to don our masks, just like Jackie said, put our masks on, round with our teams, listen to our teams. And probably one of the most important pieces of feedback I received from my team throughout all of this, all of the past 9 months, and this is a message for always, is that feedback, that communication can never be enough. So whether people are just hearing from you verbally, by email, by everyday huddle, team members needed to hear what was going on, not necessarily just in our organization, but how does this affect me and our team and our work? Many people were very worried about, and are still worried about, their families, their kids, if they get sick, if their kids get sick, how to teach their kids at home, how to shift and still come to work every day and take care of their kids. So there are many different situations that me and then my team as other leaders had with our teams to make sure we communicated regularly. We were not only planners, but we needed to be listeners first. Sometimes we were directors and had to stop and navigate, and the word pivot became a part of our everyday vocabulary. One of the most important kind of cool aspects that I was put into on the course of this whole COVID crisis is an operational leader in charge of supply chain. So our laboratory began putting together kits to collect COVID samples, not only, and just what you heard in the news that we didn't have enough supplies, we didn't have enough swabs, we did not have enough media, enough tubes. So we had to pivot almost every single day to make sure that we had these supplies, that we were able to put them together and then distribute them to the greater community and all of our health partners and Park Nicollet clinics. Up until today, I mean, we as leaders, and myself have depended on hearing from our team members, whether they were furloughed team members who were coming to work, or team members and planners that needed to hear from us as leaders. So some of the most important lessons I learned in asking for and receiving 360 feedback during this period of time are these three. The very first thing is to ask for feedback often and in many different ways. And just like we do in Saturday Morning Live, not only ask for it, but be ready to receive it. You know, take your pride and throw it out the window. If you've done something that you could change or be better at, throw it out the window and listen. Secondly, and I think I've learned this from my team and my peers, but many other leaders, is give yourself grace. We don't always do this right as leaders. We might not always do it right the first time or even the second time. But the fact that we're trying, we're listening, we're progressing, and we have the right the right purpose in mind, that we are here to take care of our patients and our team members, that is actually the most important piece. And finally, the third most important lesson I've received is be ready and be prepared to step in to a leadership position, and also be ready to step back. There are some times when a leader doesn't need to be in the front and doesn't need to be in the front of the back, in the front of the pack. So it's time to step in and then step out if ever needed. So I guess the message to everyone here today is, if and when you are in a position of leadership, and it's probably daily for everybody in this group, there are many different things you can learn by asking for feedback from your team to apply to your situational leadership. Whether you're leading a team of people who are planning in advance, or you're working with a team of people who are planning for a crisis like COVID. Be ready to step in, step out, and again, give yourself grace. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Pat.